Hello and welcome to our open discussion. Andreas Zehetner is a professor of marketing at the University of Applied Sciences, Upper Austria. He has a doctoral degree from the Karl Franz University of Graz. Since 2013, he occupies the position of Vice President of International Affairs and is a member of the University Board of Management. In this position, he is responsible for international relations with partner institutions, as well as the university industry connections concerned to align faculty and researchers' interest, as well as the students' and graduates' potentials to the needs and expectations of these enterprises. In his research, he is interested in organizational buying behavior, negotiation, and emotional and social competences in sales and sales management, as well as in higher education research with respect to internationalization and university-industry relationships. I'd like to invite Professor Andreas Zehetner.
Hi, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for the nice words. I'm very happy to be able to speak here to you and share my thoughts about what I have experienced this very morning. So I need to admit that I almost spent all this day in front of my computer listening to the presentations that have been delivered by my colleague within this wonderful conference. Compliments to the organizers and compliments to the speakers who broadened my horizon on the grid as a concept that is so much multidisciplinary. I try to share now my slides. I hope you can see my first slide because I just see now my slide and not myself and you. Maybe just a few words about my institution. So we are the Upper Austria University of Applied Sciences. We have 4 schools, around 6,000 students, 20,000 alumni, and we are very proud of the fact that 99% of our alumni do have a job 6 months after graduation. We are a research-driven institution and we have around 9 international programs. But most importantly, we are a proud partner of HIT since last year. And I very much remember my first visit to your university, your beautiful campus, the beautiful museum that we have been, and the beautiful people that I had the privilege to talk with. You all know this picture. This is one of the PowerPoint menus that allows us, when we do a PowerPoint presentation, to snap to the grid or not. I find this lovely because what does it do? It allows us to decide whether we want to follow a grid or not. If we follow, then we do not have an option to place our elements just next to that grid line because it's somehow magnetically attracted to the next grid, right? You know that. But also, the grid allows us and guides us to design and structure our work and help us to save time. So it does both. It has its good, bright, and its weak, dark sides, if we wish. In PowerPoint, we can easily decide whether we use a grid or not. In my little summary of what I have learned today, I follow the definition of a grid as a pattern of horizontal and vertical lines spaced out at regular intervals, forming squares or rectangles on a map, a chart, a photograph, an optical device, or even on a face, used as a reference for locating points. And this is nothing that we have invented. And Professor Borghini has very nicely referred in her speech about biomimicry that there are a lot of grids in nature, a strawberry, a honeycomb, a pineapple, or even a snake skin. And we borrow from nature to develop our grids. So that's nothing that we have invented, actually. A grid, and this is now what I want to share with you is the good thing and maybe the thing we have to be a little bit cautious when we talk about grid in a multidisciplinary research environment. Positively, the grid gives us something to hold on, right? And honestly, don't we need all some secure hold in times like these where we can hold on? But also it provides support. It provides support in structuring information, in input, in analyzing, in visualizing, but also in using the output. That has been mentioned in today's keynote speech in the very morning by Professor Ahitov. A grid helps us to save time. And I'm talking not about disciplines now, I'm talking about the help of a grid in science in general. Because if we understand the grid and after some practice, it becomes easier for us and faster to see where information has to be put and can be retrieved from. We also do not have to design the grid on ourselves sometimes, because there are many popular grids in many disciplines, in the arts, but also in business and engineering, in IT, available, and only one Google search away from us. Also, the grid, and now I'm referring to multidisciplinary work, makes collaboration run smoother. If a grid becomes a kind of a guideline for collaborating people, groups, researchers, members, that each member of the team must follow, then it's much easier to collaborate on a project because it keeps information and data consistent. It helps, now I quote again Professor Ahitov from this very morning, it helps integrating and synchronizing data, and that holds especially for multidisciplinary work, as has been worked out very lovely in the morning today. But also from an output perspective, data that is organized along a grid looks organized and balanced. So using the same or similar grids for multiple informants and data collectors will help to unify them and makes data better predictable for analysts and users and much more easy to navigate. So there are many good things about grids that we can rely on and base on. Jumping to the other side, where should we be a little bit more cautious? Most of the grids that I know are linear. That means that the distance between the grid lines and the elements of the grids is the same, 1 or 2 or 3. Yeah? You can see that here. But there are also non-linear grids. There are grids that follow the Fibonacci sequence, for instance, as you might see here. And the question behind this is linear thinking in science the only option, or can that be even a trap for us? For instance, in visual arts. We might hypothesize, and not me being an artist, so please kill me if I'm saying something wrong, but might grids that we use in visual arts produce undifferentiated, unspectacular artwork sometimes? Professor Leao Rego from Brazil this very morning, an architect, he referred to that, and he said a grid sometimes might be a calculated indifference. That might happen. Or about symmetry. We had a beautiful lecture this morning by Professor Chang, who referred to Chinese architecture. For instance, a forbidden city in Beijing, which I have visited numerous times, and the perfect symmetry that is given in this palace. And I asked her, does symmetry equal harmony or beauty? And she said that this question needs specific consideration. At the end, she says, yes, symmetry can mean harmony because the human being is looking for order, is looking for something unexpected. However, symmetry is also something that can be detected in our faces, and face recognition software that we find increasingly in larger cities with all those cameras around us is used to find elements in the face that can be identified through a grid. But is symmetry really equaling beauty? And you all know this picture where the one to your left is the original picture, and the one to your right is a completely symmetric picture of this lady, where the right side has been mirrored. Beauty is always in the eye of the beholder, and I leave it up to you to distinguish or to decide which of the faces seems more attractive to you, the original or the perfectly symmetrical face. I simply leave that up to you. In music, we had a lot of very nice sessions about music, and music, of course, might follow grids, but might those grids in music, those patterns that are repeatedly followed, and I'm not a musician, so again, please let me know if I'm wrong, might those grids lead to expected mainstream songs that sometimes stem from computer-generated audibles that might sound familiar to the listeners and hence will be clicked or downloaded because it is something that they expect? But could they be also likely to be short-lived and quickly replaced by others, similar ones, because they are not distinct? I was trying to find evidence on that, and what you can see here is a very interesting chart about the duration of pop songs in the chart. So in the upper chart, you see the number of songs that entered the charts over the years from the 80s to 2000s, and very interestingly, in the lower chart, you see how long those songs stayed in the charts. Very interestingly, and that does not prove my hypothesis, that songs that are following more and more patterns and seem more similar because computers are aiding those songs to be generated. Despite that, songs now stay for a longer time in the chart. So the half time of the songs did not decrease. However, we have to say, and please be aware of this dotted line here, this is the line where downloads, not only purchases in music shops, but downloads started to be included in these charts. So there might be a bias through the fact that people might listen to downloaded songs more frequently, get used to those, and as such they keep longer in the charts. But this is something that I actually do not know. In engineering, you know, we have a very big school of engineering, and our engineers are research driven, so they want to go into new things, into new aspects, into innovation. The question that remains is, do grids help or hinder groundbreaking and maybe disruptive innovations like Uber? If the pattern tells us that a taxi is a taxi and a private driver is a private driver and a bus is a bus, maybe Uber perhaps would not have been invented. Maybe it's about being afraid to leave patterns or grids that might hinder us from being radically and disruptively innovative. I consulted with my colleagues on that matter, engineers, and they told me that I'm right and not. So they need their frameworks, they need their grids, they need their common understanding, they need their lines and along which they direct their research. but also sometimes they need to leave the grid, jump out, and simply be creative. And ultimately in business, which is my discipline, I found something interesting about grids. You know, there is, I show you here two grids that are very, very symptomatic for the business world. The one here is the Boston Consulting Group's market growth and market share grid, which gives an indication of what businesses should do depending on in which quadrant of this grid they are located. And the other one, very similar, is the famous Mckinsey Matrix, a 3x3 matrix, that also has two dimensions: business strength and market attractiveness, and allocates investment decisions there. Why am I showing you that? Because what is the similar about these two things is that there is always one star dimension. The one is here, and this is the other one here. And this star dimension is that one where both the x and the y-axis are high. Oh, sorry. And that's a problem, because that might lead us in business to a paradigm that says the more the better, the larger the better. The more intelligent you are, the better your job will be. The more money you invest in R&D, the more profitable you will be. Evidence proves that wrong. And we have to be very careful with these kinds of grid, with these kinds of grid, that they might lure us into something that only strives for, if you increase that dimension, the other one will automatically increase as well. And I show you one example of my personal research. I was introduced as that my research is related to emotional intelligence and performance. And this is one of my papers that I have published, where I combine performance, in this case sales performance, with emotional intelligence. And I found the relationship to be not a the more the better relationship, but an inverted U shape. That means that the more I move on that line, after a certain inclination point, performance again goes down. And we have those relationships, those inverted U shapes, in many, many facets in business. Just think about intelligence. You cannot assume that the more intelligent you are, the more you perform in business. You can be even too intelligent for a certain job. This is what grids may suggest us a little bit in business studies, and this is where we simply have to be cautious about. Coming to an end, I like a lot what Professor Gründler, colleague of us, here also in Austria from the Fachhochschule Joanneum in Graz, has said very nicely: what we make makes us. And that leaves us with the decision whether we adjust ourselves to grids or whether we go beyond the grid in whatever discipline we are. And nothing can illustrate that better as this little logical game that you all know, I'm pretty sure, where you are asked to connect these 9 points with only 4 straight lines. Connected straight lines. You know that every young person, child has played that. And the solution, of course, is that one. It's only possible to solve this logical problem if you leave the grid in these 2 edges. If you don't leave the grid, you will get stuck with the need of more than 4 lines. So grids are of a great use if we allow ourselves to escape from them if necessary. And if you use them, if they make sense to us. To sum up, Not unexpectedly, dear colleagues, a progressive institution like HIT managed to engage into this completely interdisciplinary, current, and important topic. Not unexpectedly, the event was set up and performed in a perfect combination of technology and a human touch. I remember these many phone calls that we had and these many interactions before we started this conference. I congratulate all the organizers and speakers to this event, and I would have loved to enjoy on site at your beautiful campus and discuss with all of you. Having learned a lot today, thank you very much for listening. I'm very open to any discussion now, and I'm very open to collaborate with you in the future. Thank you very much.
Professor Zehetner, you brought tears to my eyes. First of all, definitely prove that you listened through the whole day.
I did, yeah.
Perfectly summarizing in every and each point or main point of the lectures in really, really impressive way. I think we also found the logo for the conference.
Absolutely.
At the last four lines to connect the dots. You raised a lot of course, valid and interesting points, which we need to think further about, the pros and cons of the work that we try to do and all of us encounter. And one point that both we were speaking while you were lecturing, we were at awe from what you were saying. One point that I wanted to emphasize, and I try to emphasize this in my talk today, and everybody actually proved it, that if you go, it's not only to go out of the grid, it's to go from your own grid to another grid, experience what you need to experience, and then leverage that in a kind of combination. So definitely to stay within your own grid, definitely each grid has its advantage. Mm-hmm. But if you combine the advantages of the two, then you're really there. Then really 1 and 1 is 3. So for me, this is the thing, and you really put everything in place. I really want to thank you, and it's completely spontaneous now.
Absolutely. Very much. Same here. I back everything that was said just now. Thank you very much, Professor Andreas Zehetner. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a day full of fascinating stories about moving in and from grids and makers of dreams and journey from discipline to discover new combinations and leverage knowledge and skills. I, for one, discovered that at the end, one is responsible and capable, once out of the box, to create a new space of his own. And due thanks now. We wish to thank all of you who came, listened, participated, and took part in this event. We wish again to thank you for all the wonderful people who thought, designed, produced, and worked relentlessly to make this event happen. In these unusual times, noting is not taken care of for granted. So we wish to thank all of you and wish you all good health. And may you find your favorite grids that these times are offering. So for your convenience, the entire conference will be uploaded to HIT's YouTube channel. It's been my pleasure to spend the day with all of you. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.